Hi everyone, Simon here with a review of Inertial Drift. Inertial Drift is a drift racing game that's available for PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch and PC. It's a PS4 version I bought and that you see on your screens. The game is uniquely positioned in the racing market because of how it controls drifting in a game. And I'm notoriously not a fan of drifting games, which is why it's really surprised me that I've fallen deep down the rabbit hole of this game, trying to perfect things that feel like I'm trying to buckaroo on the back of a horse trying to get round various circuits. The game though introduces you to drifting really interestingly and in a nice, succinct and easy to manage way. There are 16 cars for you to choose from, but 4 are unlocked at the very beginning, and they all take slightly different tiers of car for you to kind of play with and see what works for you. The easier difficulty ones require you to just brake and accelerate using trigger buttons, and then the left analog stick kind of controls, for me it was my front tyres, and then the right analog stick controls your rear, and you need to, very similar to racing bike games when you're leaning everywhere as well as steering, quite often you'll need to press the sticks in the same direction to kind of spin drift around various tight hairpins or kinks or curves or chicanes so that you can find the most efficient way to get through that corner without decreasing your speed and therefore losing time. That was how I kind of aligned the sticks in my head, but there's also a quite handy display down at the bottom of the screen that kind of shows how far you can drift at your current speed to the left or to the right. So if you already maxed out on the drift but you aren't maxed out on the bottom run, it means that if you decrease the speed you can kind of go a bit further into a drift and make a tighter turn, so you are kind of maxed out at your potential at that speed, if that makes sense. I really found the UI very helpful for this, as well as the feeling of the car itself. What would then happen once you get beyond those initial kind of turns and those initial cars is that as you step up in the difficulty, the car's top speed increases, but also the car's weight increases, and this requires you to play the game completely differently, and this is where the replayability and the longevity of Inertial Drift for me personally came into play. When you've got some of the cars that are heavier, instead of just turning around and kind of easing off the accelerator occasionally to make a hairpin, you need to quite often stamp on the brakes, flick the car into the spin, and then hammer on the accelerator if you're trying to get round a corner, because it will kind of spin the car into a really acute turn to get you around some of the hairpins. Some of them will require feathering, some of them may just require you to kind of hang around at 50% of the actual trigger depth. It's really different depending on the type of car that you play. And what I liked as you started to unlock new cars through challenges in the story mode was that you can really find cars that suit certain circuits better than others if you want to really go for time trials and that kind of thing. But also you can find one that suits your own play style. I personally did struggle with some of the more difficult cars to get used to because I'm not a fan of drift games and it doesn't kind of click in my head. However, what this game has is that one more go factor, because there's always ghost cars going round showing you better ways of doing things, and you start to learn from them as they go round, and that's really what the story mode does. It puts you into 6 or 7 different challenges where you will go to different circuits, have a go at seeing some of the ghost cars that go round, and then you'll basically be on a time attack depending on the type of event that you're in. Although there are races, they're really time attacks all the way across the board, except for the style challenges that are out there, which revolves you basically continually drifting and drifting as close to the barriers as possible without touching them to gain points. Think of it very similar to how some of the dirt games would deal with drift events and things like that, and same for Gran Turismo. Completely different games, I know, but it's the same kind of style of event. Everything else is time trial based, because when you're racing against cars that are ghosted, so you drive through them, not around them. You don't need actual racecraft. This is all about making sure that you're as efficient with your top speed as possible, and if that means that you feather out the throttle slightly earlier so that you can hammer on the gas earlier in the apex of a corner, that will pay you dividends. Same for tie trials, that's exactly the same thing. There is also a duel mode which counts up points depending on how far you are ahead of your opponent over the course of the race. Again though, because they're ghosted, it's all about the time trial and getting through to things. You can also take this onto split screen multiplayer mode as well as online multiplayer mode as well. However, at the time of review so far, I've not actually been able to connect to anyone online to have an online race, but it seems that you choose like a category of car depending on difficulty, and then you can choose your track and kind of go up against each other in races or time trials. Split screen worked beautifully. Apologies, I don't have any particular footage of it because I only had someone over for a couple of days whilst I had this game, and they were not good at all. And I didn't want to use that footage, it was woeful. But actually in terms of frame rates and stuff like that, it worked perfectly functionally well, and the game, as you can see, looks beautiful, and I adore this art style, particularly on the neon city lights and some of the like waves. It reminds me, of the Initial D anime, of course, but it also reminds me a little bit of Outrun Coast to Coast. But I appreciate the random influence there, but I feel like it's had a part to play. As you go through story mode with 4 of the initial characters, you unlock challenges, and those challenges are then played separately for you to unlock and play with the new cars as it goes on through. There's plenty to do and see for the price. I did wish that there was maybe another 2 tracks that could have helped out with the repetitiveness of the reverse and forward motions of stuff, but aside from that, this game is an absolute gem, and it's got that Moorish quality around it where, because you're constantly having to deal with ghost cars from AI and online as well, because they'll download in the practice and time trial versions and single player if you want them to. It's beautifully poised for you to constantly perfect and really chase that ultimate lap, which I think you'll struggle to get, especially as you go up the difficulty in the cars. But yeah, extremely Moorish, so easy to get into but very difficult to master. This has been easily probably my favourite racing surprise of 2020, and that says a lot because there's been some decent games come out racing wise in 2020. This was on my radar as being I wonder, curious oddity. This is an absolute get. Superb. I've got a written review coming up on highplanegames.com if you prefer to drill down into some more details later this week, but in the meantime, happy drifting, and I'll catch you later. Bye for now. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a collection of media projects ran by me. If you like what you see and want to find out more, visit patreon.com/Higher Plane Network. Your support can make so much more possible, be that a like, a comment, a share, or a pledge. Thanks for watching.